When it comes to our health and light, there are amazing implications like better sleep and weight loss. But what if that wasn't the end of the story? Stay tuned to today's episode to find out more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. This is the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel. Today, I have on Matt Maruca, who is the founder and owner of Raw Optics. Now, he's actually a second-time guest back on the podcast. Our first episode was about 3.5 hours long. I feel like I could just talk to Matt forever, and it's just one of those things when you meet a person and you may have gone a year and a half without talking, but you just pick up right where you left off. There's just so much interesting stuff that I wanted to talk with Matt about today. I hope you enjoy the episode and make sure you follow Matt. If you want to check out anything at Raw Optics, you can use my code Sarah in all caps to save 15%. I will make sure that is linked down in the show notes for you. And I'll definitely be bringing Matt back on. He is working on some really cool things with light therapy. It goes way beyond red light therapy. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that when we do that episode, you won't miss it. And before we jump into today's episode, I want to thank two sponsors. The first one is going to be Viva Rays. They are a fantastic source for circadian rhythm protection. I love their products, and you can use my code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva Rays. They also have amazing sleep masks, earplugs, and low EMF or almost no EMF headphones. So make sure to check out Viva Rays. Again, use my code YOGI to save 15% off over there. Second sponsor of today's show is going to be Upgraded Formulas. They are my go-to source for understanding the mineral balance within your body. I always say a blood test is only going to tell you what's going on today at this moment in time. Hair tissue mineral analysis can let you know what's been going on over the last 60 to 90 days. So check out Upgraded Formulas. Use my code YOGI12 or YOGI if you have already used that one before. And without further talking on my end, let's just jump right into this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Super excited about today's guest, actually a return guest. And it's so crazy. We were just saying like, oh, it feels like we literally just talked yesterday, but it's been like a year and a half, right, Matt?
Yep. October 21.
Yeah. Awesome. You remember the date. Awesome. Yeah. So this is Matt Maruca. He is the founder of Raw Optics, and I'll link our previous interview below. It was like 3.5 hours long. So excited to have you back, Matt. Thank you for being here.
Sarah, I'm stoked to be here. Let's chat. Let's get down to it. I love this.
Yeah, let's talk. So what has been going on since the last time we talked? I know you're just basically traveling the world right now, running your company, educating people on light. Let's just catch up a little bit.
Yeah. It's been pretty full on, I have to say. Like after the pandemic situation, and I think even I'll give people a brief rundown on my background in case this is their first episode, but I do recommend going back and listening because we got super deep. But I'm originally from Philly, born and raised. After a while living in Philly, started my own company and began traveling the world and pretty much haven't stopped since then. That was 6-ish years ago. Let's see, 18. I'm going to be 24 in August. I started the business right after I turned 18. So it'll have been 6 years by September. And I've just been traveling mostly out of, I think like an interest in seeing different places, connecting with different people. Like given that I can, it's almost like, why not? Especially at this age when what I want to do is explore. And regarding the business, of course, it's a blue light protection glasses company, hence my kind of funny position in the beginning. Although for those listening, I just put on my glasses and made a bit of a funny Instagram face. But anyway, I've done this, of course, because as you know, Sarah, of course, I had some health challenges. I started trying diets, had a lot of improvements. However, learn about light and learn how much more there is to understand about health and wellness and how much deeper it goes. And the business was and is something that gives people, I believe, like the lowest hanging fruit way to start to improve their energy body, essentially our light body, by re-regulating our body's connection to the external circadian rhythms of nature and aligning our internal circadian rhythms with that. So that's what the business is. And you already know this, of course. Now, as far as the last couple of years, it has been a pretty interesting ride, I have to say. I had gotten really interested in, and much of our last conversation was on the subject of the power of meditation, largely inspired by the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, but also many other ancient masters and the work of whom I've been studying. And so, yeah, I'd say since our last time I've traveled all over the world. I've been, geez, I was in Sardinia when we spoke last, and I had just come from an event, sometime in Russia, sometime in Turkey, sometime in Bosnia, sometime in mainland Italy. And since Sardinia, the places I've been I'll just like rattle all these off. This is 2021. So this is October. So basically like 1.5 years ago. So like I'd say 18 months ish.
Wow.
So I went from Sardinia to Rome to Switzerland, or Venice, then to Switzerland, to Zurich, then to the mountains, then fly to Norway, spent New Year's into 2022 in Norway with really low sun, really short days, sort of like a real internal reset.
Yeah.
Snow, like going super deep, like 5 hours of light. It was super cool. Really did like different experience. And I really enjoyed it actually, because I had been craving cold in winter and I loved it. It was cold outside and I was staying in a nice house with a fireplace. It was great. From Norway, back to Switzerland to Geneva, went from Geneva to Germany, met a friend of mine who's a superstar soccer player who I met years ago in Norway, actually. But then at that point, he was playing for a German team. And then went from there to Costa Rica, spent a while in Costa Rica, then went and traveled all over the US. After some time in Costa Rica, I was in Miami in the States at a Bitcoin conference. I was in California. I went out to Colorado. I went up and saw family in Idaho. I don't know if I think I made it to Austin, Texas at one point throughout there. It was a lot of travel. And then I went to Cancun for another Dispenza event, East Coast with family. Geez, this is a lot. Then I went back to Europe for all of summer of 2022 and was in, Florence, Germany, London, Amsterdam, Mallorca, Greece, mainland, and 2 islands, Turkey. And then I went to Bali for 4 months. And then I went to Australia for
4 months. Wow.
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, that was where I really spent the last chunk of time in most recent past. So thankfully I got to ground down. And I was in Australia for another Joe Dispenza week-long retreat, and some time in Australia meeting with some cool people in the health world there. And then I 2 weeks ago flew from, basically a little more than 2 weeks now, flew from Australia to Europe and was landed in Switzerland, but went straight to Germany, to Munich, and then went to another town close to Munich where I have a friend in the health and wellness world. Most of the people I meet with are in this world. Then to Prague, just because I wanted to check out this Eastern European city, Prague. And cool note about that is that they still use the old school orange, low pressure sodium discharge lamps. So all the city is still that orange glow, which is super cool. They haven't ruined it with LEDs yet. LEDs. Yeah, it's really cool. So that was cool. Nice. And then from Prague, I went to Germany to meet with our, let's say, chief scientific advisor at RA. His name's Dr. Alexander Wunsch. You've probably heard of him. He's pretty popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're working with him closely. So it's really exciting. And then to Barcelona to meet with different partners. So it sounds like a lot because it is a lot, but I figured I'd share because it may give some context. Like it's been a lot of movement, of course, and definitely it can be a little tiring on the body, but I feel like my spirit is empowering me for what I'm doing, because somehow it's like when you have a mission and there's things to be done, I feel like it has to be a higher priority. And I'm feeling, I have to say, more and more and more empowered by what I'm seeing happening with Dr. Joe Dispenza's community and how they're changing so many lives with the power of meditation. And it's really spreading like wildfire. Coming to Spain, we have a doctor here who is a top functional medicine doctor in Spain. So is really open to these different types of practices, and has clinics in Barcelona, Madrid, and another smaller town near Barcelona, and a large, team of doctors. And to see how interested they are in this. And then we had dinner with like the head doctor at the Football Club Barcelona. We have like the top team in England right now, one of the top teams in England wearing our glasses. So it's like kind of amazing, but the whole consciousness about light, But even like inner light, like spirituality
Mm.
is coming to life. And I think it's really cool because I just wonder like how much time does it take from this sort of like bubbling that's going on in the world, around the world of consciousness growing, to start to see these changes in politics and in economics. And I mean, I think they're probably already happening, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens. So I'm super optimistic. The last few years have shown me a lot of good is going on in the world. That's pretty much where I'm at.
I love that. And it's good to think about things in that way, because I think that a lot of people I talk to, we kind of look at the opposite of like, here's a problem that we're trying to solve. And I love that you're kind of putting it out there in a different way. And I think we have to do that if we want to see good things and manifest good things in our life, right?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I recently had the thought, which I found extremely valuable, because for me, it's like I have so much flexibility, Sarah, which is like really cool. But sometimes I find myself like feeling like I'm losing my mind.
Mm,
And
yeah.
of course, it's by choice, like in my view, at least. I believe these things are by choice. Um, what I mean by that is I could go to like anywhere where I have some friends or whatever, and decide that I want to rent a place or buy a place or whatever, and just kind of have like that kind of stability and not have so much energy invested in like the motion. But I see, as I mentioned before, like I see there's so many opportunities, people to meet with, things to do, places that I want to explore. And I'm like, for such a long time, I used to tell myself, like, oh, I'm going to make it with my company or blah, 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 or have like, millions and millions of dollars just sitting around. And I'm just going to go do whatever I want to do. And I'm like, that's all an illusion. I mean, that's what the spiritual practices have taught me. If we truly only have the present moment, then this is something we definitely touched on in our last podcast. I like it just echoed back to me. If you truly are in the present moment, then the only time you ever have is now. And so the way that you're living now is the way you're living your life, period. Like that's it. We talked I believe about like how the way you live your day is the way you live your life, but it's even like in
Mm,
this moment, it almost sounds weird, but that's it. So I had this thought. So the reason I preface this is that like I have to find new and different ways of thinking about life, I believe, to alleviate some of the challenges that come from thinking about things in the conventional ways. Like if you take the way that people just have all accepted and agreed upon thinking about certain conditions, ideas, things, etc., then my discovery is that a lot of these beliefs lead to suffering. And so
mm-hmm,
I've had to question, like, what are the fundamental beliefs I've accepted that I think almost everyone else around me has
mm-hmm.
accepted, although I can't say for sure, that are maybe not like true or real.
Yeah.
And there's one I want to get into, but another one I want to get into. But the thought I had right now is that I had this idea, it popped in my head, the term problem consciousness. I realized
Mm,
that, like, as long as I live, in one moment I was really stressing, and I realized like I've chosen in many cases to live in what I would call problem consciousness. And like the way I would describe problem consciousness, and I've never heard this before, maybe someone else uses the term, but I never heard it from anyone else yet. So I don't think, I don't think I'm stealing it. So a lot of the time what happens is that people simultaneously have the same idea because it's in the field, like it's ready to be,
mm,
it's ready to be discovered or whatever. But anyway, so like, for example, I would be, in some situation, like some normal situation, like walking down the beach or whatever, and thinking like stressful thoughts, like bringing myself to be stressed, like unhappy and feeling stressed. And then I
yeah.
could realistically evaluate my life and think like, okay, Matt, like you like just and this is I think this is my karma to work through these lessons in this way. Like I sort of say to myself, like, Matt, you are 23 years old or 22, like at the time, maybe. Like you have a business that lets you go anywhere you want. You have 100% degree of freedom for anything you want to do in the day, as long as you keep your business running and keep revenue flowing in, and you're going to be, you're going to be good, or you have cash. Like fundamentally, all we really need to live is like the core basics, like food, water, shelter. And if you
Mm-hmm.
choose to opt into the monetary system instead of just, uh, you know, going off the grid and hunting and foraging and surviving off the land, which is almost illegal because like you can't really do that on national
Right.
forest land. So you'd have to buy land. So like pretty much you could say it's kind of like the Matrix. Like we don't really have the choice. It's not that easy to opt out.
Right.
You could probably figure it out if you wanted to. A lot of people
Yeah.
figured things like that out, like go live super cheap on a plot of land. But anyway,
Right.
assuming you don't decide to do that, because that's just not what most people are doing. And most people don't want to do that because then you cut yourself off from your family, your friends, society, culture, our relations, and the beautiful opportunities of being incarnated in this age and not 100,000 years ago, when death and disease and struggle and survival, like it's a whole different game. And so I'm telling
Right.
myself this, I'm like, so all I pretty much need to do is keep some form of cash flow coming in to cover my expenses or have enough cash saved, but know that I'm kind of setting myself up in a position for the future. But I'm only going to live 100 years, maybe more. If I master the whole meditation thing, maybe I could choose to be eternal, but that's a different, a whole different conversation. But so it's like, I'm telling myself like, so you got all these things, like you're not going to starve. You're not going to die. Like you're going to be fine. Like even if if something happened with your business, like all the things that the mind tries to throw out that could possibly go wrong in life. I'm like, okay, but none of those are happening. They haven't happened and they have no inclination. And the more I worried about them in the past, the less they happen. Like they just never happened, I shouldn't say the more I worried, the less they happened, but like the worrying that I had before just never came to fruition is what I'm trying to say. Right. And
Yeah.
so essentially, then in any moment, if I'm choosing to worry, like, so having this conversation with myself, like, so Matt, everything's actually fine. Like reality, factually, everything's fine. So what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? And that's a question that I really am still working on. But I had this super simple shift, right? If the idea is that we only live in the present moment and there isn't like all this other, we don't need to worry about, I love one of the things Joe Dispenza says is like, he doesn't want people to go back to their past traumas and relive them like some trauma
Right.
work does. Nothing against
Yeah.
different trauma work, but it's like, it's about
I don't think you
overcoming the
have to
emotion.
in order to heal, honestly. Like, I don't think it's necessary to do that to
I
heal
don't
from
think so
trauma.
either. I even, from what I've gathered, it could even like just re-emphasize it.
Yeah.
However, the
Creates like a new imprint in the body,
yeah, they call it in Hindu these samskaras. So like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
stuff, right? Yeah, you
Hmm.
know this, of course, with your
Yeah.
background. So, to just Michael Singer describe it well, like you just have to let it go. And that's what Joe Dispenza, I believe, refers to when he says he just wants people to overcome that emotion. So with that being said, like living in the present moment, then if I'm living in what I'm calling problem consciousness, like that's just my choice. Like I could be choosing.
Hmm.
And so I guess another way of putting it is like a victim mindset. I think that's maybe a more
Right.
relatable term for people, but that never resonated with me. But
Hmm.
problem consciousness resonates with me like on a verbal linguistic level, because I realize like I'm in a consciousness, like I have this experience of the world. And if I'm in problem consciousness, somehow there's never enough time, everything's a mess. There's always way too many things to do, and life is really difficult. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, well, what if I could just change the consciousness and be in what I would call opportunity consciousness? Like I have an unlimited amount of opportunities, an unlimited amount of great things that I can do to make progress in my business or my different personal goals. I have an unlimited amount of places I could go or things I could do and see. And especially with the freedom I've been granted, I believe it's been largely to give me the opportunity to figure out this inner struggle, because I realize it hasn't like the freedom that I had from externally being able to travel and this and that actually didn't make me happy. Like I felt really stressed and really miserable
Yeah.
for long periods. And I think
Yes.
we talked about
Yes.
that probably on our last show. So anyway, that is something when you talk about the kind of whatever it was you said that actually stimulated this about consciousness and thinking and
Hmm.
stress and changing. Yeah, it was just changing the mindset. I really believe it's something more important than one would maybe assume.
Yeah. Yeah. So like before the last time we talked, it's funny, like all the podcasts that I did in 2021, not all of them, but when I had a special connection with somebody like I did with you, I would always be like, oh, we had this like long 4-hour conversation. So I'm like telling you, I've been going through this like battle to get pregnant and, miscarriages and IVF that didn't work and all this stuff. And, you know, you were super encouraging to me to like continue to manifest that and to continue like the programming in my mind around the baby and around everything. And I got really into, I love Joe Dispenza. I've read all his books, and but I've always connected with Louise Hay. I don't know if you've listened to any of her stuff at all.
I've heard of her. I'm not super familiar, but I've heard really
All
good
right, I'm
things.
going to send you some of her,
Oh,
like
please
she's
do.
passed, but um I've just really resonated with a lot of it's all the same stuff. Like it's, if
Yeah.
you read the book Think and Grow Rich from the 30s, a lot of that stuff, my husband just finished reading it and he's like, this is the same stuff you talk about with like your Louise Hay or your Joe Dispenza. It's like all in the same frame of like the programming, the thoughts that are in your head. And with the baby, and I know with your business and with everything, it's kind of like you have to recognize a thought, right? And just see it as like this energy. And if I'm putting out in my head like I'm infertile, I'm not going to get pregnant, like if that program is playing, my body hears it and it believes it and it takes it on, right? And so, a lot of what Louise Hay puts out there, she has a book called You Can Heal Your Life, and her whole thing is like changing, like Joe Dispenza, changing the programming and being willing to let go of, like, there's a thing I say all the time that's one of her mantras. When something is happening that I'm like, oh God, I totally like manifested this, I always say I'm willing to release the pattern within me that manifested this situation, and I try to
I
like,
love that.
I have it like written down and I like say it all the time. It doesn't matter what it is. If I'm like, pissed off and someone's like being a dick to me in traffic, or like I'm just in a crappy conversation with someone, I'm like, what pattern within me manifested this energy here? And then just flipping it and saying, I'm willing to release this pattern that created this, and that's been like so huge for me. And I had to do that in order to get pregnant and then manifest this new house. It's like, wonderful, a lot bigger than our old house. It was like a little shoebox, and like so many things in my life that have happened since we last talked. It's like a completely, like we were saying, it's like same but different. It's like I'm the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
person, but everything's different. But all of that has really happened, I think, because I'm always just now looking at things through that like programming lens. Like what pattern is popping up here that's in me? You know what I mean?
This is amazing. I'm going to start using that phrase. I'm willing to release the pattern within me that's caused this situation. Could you repeat
Yeah.
it exactly as is?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I say. Just I'm willing to release the pattern within me that has manifested this
Has
situation.
manifested this situation. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I've heard variations of that, and or at
Yeah.
least they've been shared, but I didn't internalize them quite as much, or turn them into a quite like an elegant mantra. But I
Yeah.
even have a friend who's super Christian, and he when he prays, he says like, Lord, help me to rebuke all strongholds in my life. So like
Mm.
in a way, like some stronghold, like some sort of, I guess, limitation or belief or something that's
Yeah.
holding him, but him from his fullest connection to God. Like it sounds awfully similar, or very
Yeah.
nicely similar, I should say. Got to be careful with my language here. So yeah, this is really beautiful. This is very similar to the stuff that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
I've really been thinking a lot more, especially in regards to what I'm doing with my company, about the body electric, and
Mm.
not just the book, but actually the electromagnetic body that makes up who we are. Because
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of product development, and we have been for a while, but it's all coming along in its time. And I'm not interested in just creating something like the exact same as what's out there. We want to do things that are much different and very innovative. And there's a lot that is coming up around how our body is basically electromagnetic, and how we can use different wavelengths and frequencies of light to have different effects, intentional effects, as
Mm.
well as like just setting a really positive stage for health, such as like general ambient background lighting, but also therapeutic devices. And it's something that it's forced me to really dive deeper into my thinking around the body, and also having a lot of spiritual exposure is really cool, because it eliminates dependency from anything outside of us that we would need to heal or feel whole and so on. And yet at the same time, I've come to the thought, well, wait a minute, if we don't really need anything outside of us, then why would anyone need blue light blocking glasses? Like, this is what I ask myself, rather than just trying to defend my own company. I'm like, I put it up to the test. Like, hey, if I'm not going to settle for anything less than the truth. Like, if it was a lie all this time that, that I need these blue light blocking glasses and I could just outdo the effects of blue light with my mind, I want to know that, because I don't want to be a fraud who's selling something that, I know better. And the more I thought about it, and the more I looked at the research, I'm like, well, if someone drinks rat poison, like, they will mostly die. But there's like stories of a pastor in the South, and this has happened, I believe, more than once. But these pastors who drank, like, they would drink strychnine, this like super severe like rat poisoning, but they would first be in a state of religious ecstasy, and they would basically somehow prove that, at least in their case, that the power of the Holy Spirit could overcome the deadly effects of this poison that they were about to drink, and it worked. But I don't think anyone could necessarily, I mean, I think anyone could do that, but I don't think everyone's prepared to do that necessarily.
Right. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I would definitely not recommend that. No, that's exactly, no. Just to make clear, this is not medical advice. Absolutely not. But like, so that to me is a fascinating idea. And what it implies for me is that the majority of us, myself included, are not at a level of spiritual mastery where we're capable at this moment necessarily. Maybe we could if we completely shifted our beliefs, but of, for example, manipulating the matter outside of us in a way that like would be that of a great super master. Let's say I wouldn't put a limit here, because I do believe, as I've learned from Joe Dispenza and many of these other great masters, we are actually all capable of creating our reality, changing our life, releasing our, let's say, patterns and all of these types of things. But I've come to think, at least, I could be totally wrong, that the majority of us, again, myself included, are still largely subject to the laws of three-dimensional reality. Like, if we just eat total crap all the time, then we're gonna have to deal with that. Like, if I go out and eat unhealthy food, even if I tell myself I'm gonna be really positive, sometimes maybe I won't feel the effects as much, maybe because I am being really positive and have high energy, and maybe there was other factors that day, or I was with a really good group, or I ate really slowly, or I chewed really well. But then there have been other times where, like, to be honest, I've experimented a little bit, and I've had things that I normally wouldn't eat to see, like, how is this going to affect me? And I felt pretty not the best, like pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's like I'm still subject to some of these rules. So anyway, when it comes to blue light protection, blue light glasses, it's like, I know personally, when I put on my sunset lenses at night, I feel really good. And when I'm out, if I happen to be out after sunset and the lights are all coming on, especially if they're bad lights, which most lights today are, even if whether they're cold white LEDs are some of the worst, but even warm white LEDs are pretty abrasive. There's the flicker effect, there's the lack of near infrared to balance out the wavelengths and all this stuff. So when I'm around those lights, I feel this sort of anxiety, like energy, just like a bit of a tension. As soon as I put on my red lenses, I feel so good, like so chilled out. It just changes everything. And same thing if I'm inside, like today, I was at my friend's clinic where we're going to change their lights eventually. They're already selling raw optics to their patients and on their website, but the lights were really bad, actually. And I, of course, mentioned him, and like, we were in a basement under old fluorescent lights. I was like, I didn't even know any people had fluorescent lights. I thought they were at least all LEDs. But anyway, so I had my glasses on. I was very grateful that I had them on for that hour or two or so that I was in the clinic area. And so they're great. And so it's interesting, like, and I love being super transparent about this. Like, in addition to making the best product I possibly can based on the science and the research available, this is where things start to get really interesting. And I love to dive into this, Sarah. There is so much research that the placebo effect works. And this is something Dr. Dispenza wrote a book about. You Are the Placebo.
I love that book.
Also, and there's so much other, work out there, and the studies themselves that have been done on this showing that the placebo effect is often 50% or more effective. If you give somebody a saline injection, they think it has a drug, and they're part of the control group that actually doesn't have the drug, then they'll actually a lot of the time see the results. And sometimes even when they're told that there was no drug, their results will go away because it's what they're doing with their mind. And so I've realized, like, if that's true, then irrespective of the science, well, of course, first of all, I would only want to create a product or a company based on the real science, right? Like I wouldn't sell clear lens blue light blocking glasses and say, we're going to trick people that there's science saying that these work so that then they can placebo their way to an effect. I wouldn't do that because that's against my code of ethics. And just wrong. Basically, it's against my code of ethics and what I believe to be right. However, what I will do is when we have the science, which we do around blue light blocking glasses, and we had this happened since our last conversation, we had a partnership with Aura, the maker of the Aura Ring, and we had all Aura members basically, they had an opportunity to get a free pair of our glasses in exchange for making a referral to a friend to purchase an Aura Ring. And so we had many thousands of Aura customers who got our glasses as a free gift from Aura. And so it was a huge opportunity. It was really great to connect, obviously, with Aura, connect with their team further and have this kind of partnership. Obviously, it gives a lot of, let's say, like credibility in some respect, because they're sort of the number one, in my view, biohacking company that's emerged from the biohacker niche into the mainstream. You know, the whole NBA uses their products and all this stuff. Anyway, we had so many customers from Aura leaving us reviews saying how much our glasses changed their sleep scores, even when they were skeptical, like that, oh, I didn't think this would work or this, that.
Yep.
And I thought that's really cool. So we have the science, but now that I know all this information about the placebo, or I wouldn't even call it the placebo, but the power of the mind, what I realized is it's so important when we create these products and we market them and we share them, that what we're offering people isn't just a piece of plastic, effectively, plant-based plastic with high technology lenses with specific light blocking pigments and everything. But it's the potential of a new life and the potential of sleeping better and the potential of experiencing a completely different world. Because I do believe now that is potentially equally as important as the science and the biophysical, biological effects themselves imparted by the light. Like if you did the best treatment, but you're sure it's not going to work, probably won't work. But if you did the best treatment and you really believe it, or even if you did a suboptimal treatment, not the A grade, top class, whatever treatment available for some illness, but you believe in it with all of your heart, I would bet, based on the research around the placebo, that it would work. So it's a whole different way of conceiving what we're doing as a company. Like, yes, we're going to create amazing products based on the science that can change people's health. But also, I want to help inspire and show people like you were doing, like people like Joe Dispenza are doing, like people like, Think and Grow Rich and all these other teachers with spiritual ideas are doing, is showing people about how powerful our internal capacity is. And it's also funny, my sort of another thought on this is how I've doubted my own ability at that for a long time. And then and this is a kind of to what I was saying earlier, like having the conversations with myself. I'm like, Matthew, you're 23 years old. And just in the last 18 months, not to mention that 4 years before that, you've been most places and most people have been in their life. Not that the
That's
goal.
What I'm saying. When I was 23, I was like trying to move out of my mom's house, like going out partying all night, smoking cigarettes, drinking, like working behind a desk as a receptionist. I mean, are you kidding me? Like most 23-year-old, I'm like, when I talk to you, I do not feel like you're 23. I know everyone probably says this to you, like everybody says this to you, but you're not, like, you have some kind of like incarnation of like you're a very old soul.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate it. And in the conversation I'm having with myself is like, Matthew, like, if you can't inspire people, like if you can't at least show, and like, not even by saying, I'm not even talking about saying something or saying some words that's nice. It's like, if someone won't be inspired by starting a business at 18 because of a personal issue, and then traveling the world and learning from those lessons and making many mistakes and learning and meeting people and having relationships and just going through life, right? But in a way that's not the normal path. Like, if that's not going to inspire someone, I don't know what is. And so it's like, it's not like, how can I say, I'm not out to be a spiritual teacher, but I actually believe everyone in some way who's a teacher is in some way spiritual. It's just, the question is, what are we? And we're all spiritual beings. So if you're a teacher, you're a spiritual teacher. And so it's just like, what is the frequency of energy we're going to bring out? And so I could say
Exactly.
like what I'm working on, because it's ultimately always, at least for me, it's always a work in progress and a journey. Like I'm still just being, people talk about how great it is to be like honest and transparent, but like for me, it feels like it's the only way. Like I'm still working on, Sarah, on my mind giving me a hard time, still
Yeah.
working on, worrying about my business exploding in the middle of the night, like super things that are pretty
Yeah, I
nonsensical,
think
but
we
like still.
all worry about that stuff though. It's hard, and that's what we have to keep working on, that internal programming. It's just the another Louise Hay, and it's actually a Bible verse. It's Matthew 6. And it says, the power that created us has put everything here for us, but it's up to us to deserve it and accept it. And I feel like that is what we have to get to with those self-limiting beliefs, is like accepting it and believing that the power that created all of this wonderful stuff has put it here for us, right? But so many people have these like self-limiting beliefs that like, I don't deserve to have this amazing business, I don't deserve to travel the world, I don't it's like the kind of imposter syndrome. And I think it keeps people in a specific place. Like if you, my husband and I were talking about this, we were like stuck for years. We still have, she's 15, our daughter with like severe non-speaking autism, and it
Mm,
kicked our asses, and it still does a lot of days. But we were not expecting that. We had her when we were in our 20s. We were like 27, 28. We were not expecting to have a child that every single doctor we took her to, they were like, well, we've never seen this before. We've seen autism, but we haven't seen this kind of autism. Because like all these experts, they just are like, we don't know what to do with this. And, so for years, we were just kind of living in this survival mode with these like self-limiting beliefs. And like, we stayed in the same like little tiny house, and like broken down cars, and like no money in the bank, and just like really hard. And over the last couple of years, it's like everything's totally different, like completely different. And I think it was just this like shift of meeting people like you and starting to change that internal patterning, Dr. Dispenza and Louise Hay, of like understanding it's all there. There's no limited supply of happiness. I was going to say money, but it's like people, yeah, duh, there's no limited supply of money, but there's no limited supply of happiness. Just because someone else is happy doesn't mean I can't be equally happy or more happy. Like I feel like so many times in life, like and if I knew the stuff at freaking 23, my life would have been totally different, but we have to be able to like deserve and accept these things, and all that chatter in your mind about my business is going to explode. And
yeah.
that's so like normal. Like I think everyone goes through that. But the thing is, you're obviously not internalizing and believing those things. Like your other work is counteracting that.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I share the example, and this is like business is one example. Like I've learned so much. I'm so grateful you shared what you shared before, this idea about the patterns. Because even like you're really honest and vulnerable and transparent about like the thinking about fertility and this and that. And it's like if I sit and say, yeah, I have like health problems, let's say, because for such
Mhm.
a long time that was the script I told myself.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
so many
start to
people do
think,
this.
act, believe, like eat in the way that almost aligns with that frequency, like eating
Mm-hmm.
the wrong things, doing the wrong things. Changing the frequency has helped me a lot, because I actually, and the irony so often. So a lot of the time what people have to do is they have like, let's say, or they're expressing a disease state, and they have to change
Yes.
their mind so that they're no longer expressing the disease state.
Yes.
Where I feel the universe has given me such an interesting opportunity. At least for me, it's like, again, my, let's say, karma to learn from and hopefully share and help others with, is that like effectively I'm free of disease. Like I don't have any severe illnesses. Yeah, as a kid I had some gut issues and this and that, but like it's like when you're given the health or the blessings, and then out of fear or whatever, like I would use the term sins, like some form of sin, not necessarily in a bad way with malice or something, but like a one, the I believe like the first or the second of the seven deadly sins is to like fear or to not trust God. Like the first
Mm-hmm.
commandment is love the Lord thy God, and that includes, in my view, to trust. And so it's like somehow you could be given all the treasures in the world. One could be given all the
Right.
treasures and still sort of, let's say, spoil it by not trusting, by not believing, by not seeing things the way. And maybe it's largely because we weren't taught. Like I wasn't raised with a clear spiritual foundation for my life. So a lot of this has been lessons along the way. But I think it's very inspiring that, we can shift this with our mind and we can change our reality. And like I can, we get off the podcast and I get to choose how my afternoon is going to go and what I'm going to create. And even if I didn't have the freedoms that I have and I had to go to a day job or whatever, like I still get to choose. We still get to choose how we're going to show up, how we're going to create that experience for ourselves. And to me, of all the things I've learned and all the things I've seen, that is to me the most empowering belief or the most empowering idea, that we really get to choose. Like we get to choose to keep those patterns or release them in the moment. Like we don't have to wait until there must be a verse in the Bible that says this well. But I don't know. It's not coming to my mind right away. But basically, like there's nothing stopping us from that heaven, let's say, that heavenly experience, except ourselves. And whenever we're ready, we get to make that choice to be free. And I love that, because then it's like, it's not like I have to go do this or that, or because I've already done, Joe Dispenza calls it matter to matter, pushing like with, doing all the working really hard and studying and all this other stuff. And I have nothing against working hard and studying and, whatever else people do, like trying the diets and all this stuff. But he's proposing this other way of changing, which is using energy and changing your energy. And so I've done that for so long, and it can be tiring to like try to push, versus like to be able to know that you can sit down, close your eyes, disconnect from your environment. Like for example, in the case of meditation, you could also do it with your eyes open if you have that desire and willpower, let's say, to change your perspective completely with your eyes open. It's a little bit easier when you disconnect, in my experience, and practice it, but it's a practice. So you get better, right? And eventually doing it with your eyes open becomes easier. But to be able to do that, it like somehow it feels like it's the ultimate ticket to freedom. Like knowing that like I don't have to wait until tomorrow to change. Like I don't have to wait until in 2 hours from now. I don't have to wait till this podcast is over to become the person I want to be, express myself the way I want to express myself, let my light out and shine. I don't have to do that. So I guess I would say like my message for people, and it's similar to what it was years ago, but only evolved, is like, why would we wait? Why would we wait? I'm realizing it sounds like Joe Dispenza. Geez. But why would we wait to change our lives? Like why, for the person, if I'm speaking, let's just say, to someone who's even younger, where maybe someone who's a bit older, maybe they find some value from this. Hopefully they do. They always do when I do podcasts, at least in my experience. But I'm talking even to people my generation. Like, why would someone, if they want to, if they don't want to, if it's different, but if they want to and it's just afraid, like, why would you wait to like go out and try to start your own business? Or why would you wait to like at least go out and try to connect with that person who you want to connect with, maybe whether they're an NBA basketball player or they're like just a cool doctor or some professor in some field you're interested in. Like, why would you not just try writing that person an email? For whatever reason, someone, thankfully, maybe partially my mother, great teachers, other people imprinted onto me that we could do whatever we want and be whoever we want to be. And I feel so lucky that in my childhood, that's the frequency that stuck to me from the teachers who said, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be like, it's almost like it's a cliche, but like I was raised in that level of like, let's say, privileged, protected kind of environment. And so in spite of the challenges I had with my health and so on, as a kid, and also had lots of great experiences growing up as a kid, I had a great childhood, but I somehow kept that and somehow never let go of that belief that we can really be who we want to be and we have that freedom. And I can only imagine people who were raised not in that environment, how difficult it can be to overcome those programs. Yeah, that you're just meant to be stuck. But the thing is, like, my experiences where I have been stuck in different areas of my life have shown me, for sure, especially with health, because it had been a real struggle for a while. And I still sometimes see myself mentally slipping into certain patterns of, oh, I have this or I have that, or oh, I'm never going to do this or that, like, or be fully healed or whatever, like these patterns that just, they can percolate if we water those seeds.
Yeah.
And overcoming those very largely to a great degree for the last few years shows me I feel like anyone can overcome their stuff. Now, is it easy? No, but I believe it's a really important idea.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Just a quick little reminder, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment. Leave me a comment under this video. It will help to get it out to more and more people. Also wanted to remind you, you can always save 10% on any of my courses with the code podcast. I've got a lot of amazing courses out right now. The quantum nutrition course for helping you understand how your body and your diet interact with light, how your microbiome actually changes from the summertime to the wintertime, how your hormones change from those two different seasons, actually all year round, and how you can best eat strategically to give your body and your metabolism the leg up. Again, all my courses save 10% with the code podcast for being a loyal listener. And I hope you're enjoying this episode with Matt Maruca over at Raw Optics. As I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, if you want to save on any of the Raw Optics products, my code there is Sarah in all caps. And let's jump back into today's episode. It's so funny. I re-listen to old stuff every now and then and just get new ideas. And I was actually re-listening to Dr. Cruz's 2017 Nourish Vermont talk. And he's talking about Matt in that video. I'm like, that's Matt Maruca he's talking about. So you basically did you sneak into the whole, how did that all come about? I don't think I've ever asked you about that. I'm sure other people have before, but.
Oh, actually on podcasts, I don't think so. Nourish Vermont. Well, at that event was just let's say get a ticket, pay. And that was easy. At the time, I think it was my senior year of high school. So, cause it was 2017. You were
17 or something,
yeah, I
right?
was 17 going on 18. It was June and I was 18 in August. So this was only a few months before I ended up starting the business, but I was very much in a searching period of I finished high school now. What in the world am I doing? In fact, my friends and I went to that talk on the way back from our senior project that we did in Maine. So we were from Philadelphia. We grew up in Philly. We drove up to Maine and basically interned for a wild seaweed farmer who would basically go out and harvest seaweed on these rocks. It was the coolest senior project ever.
Wow.
We'd go out at 2 or 3 a.m. depending on when the tides were low to cut the seaweed away, harvest it, go back and then hang it up, dry it, and then pack it. It was the coolest senior project ever, honestly. And we learned about the garden, certain building skills and all this different stuff. One of my friends helped the guy build a shed, this pretty big building. It was really cool. But anyway, we were on the way back from that and we stopped in Vermont because I was like, I really want to go to this talk, guys. So my friends were down. One of them was super into it. Another one was less, but he still came. And then the other one drove his car back home or stayed longer or whatever. I don't remember. But that we just went to. But the one where a friend of mine and I kind of snuck in, let's say, is and I'm not particularly proud of it looking back on my ethics, but I'm proud of our ambition. And ultimately, I think God or the universe, forgives those who have good intentions and ultimately show that they have good intentions. If you just have good intentions, but you always do the wrong thing, I think that doesn't count. But I think if you ultimately do the right thing the next time you have the chance, I think you can make it right. So then my buddy and I got the email from this Jack Cruz community thing that he had this New Year's event for his group. And the year before, I think they had done a cruise or something like that, but they decided to do some meetup at a resort, an all-inclusive resort or whatever. And I had never been out of the country except to Canada. And then I had lived abroad in Bosnia. So that I had expanded my horizons to Europe at that point. So it was a kind of controlled study abroad program, but nonetheless out there. So I was pretty open to out there experiences. Had never been to Mexico. But anyway, so there's this event in Playa del Carmen, this kind of resort beachy town south of Cancun. And my buddy I was like, oh man, it's $400 a night. We don't have to our names, we probably each had $500, or maybe a couple $1,000. We're high schoolers, saving our money from working and maybe spending some on whatever, So anyway, I was like, that's not going to work. So we what we did was I thought it's not possible, but my friend, thank God for him, he went and saw, he was like, wait a minute, the resort's right on the beach. And we know that this whole quantum crowd is going to be hanging out in the beach, not at the chlorine pools at the resort. So let's just go see if we can get in. He's like, I found a hostel. I didn't even know what a hostel was, like a backpacker hostel. And he was like, dude, we could stay here for $20 a night, which even then that was kind of a lot of money to be shelling out every night. Like, it's so funny. But anyway, so we did that and we basically snuck in, and then we even ended up getting like wristbands for the place, like kind of through the people who were there, and they kind of like pretended they lost theirs and gave them to us, and we kind of like made them look like they were on us, like original. And we basically just kind of hung out and snuck in. But I remember feeling so guilty and so stressed the whole time, like, because I was so nervous the guards were going to be onto us.
Oh yeah.
I think I don't know if that's just me being in fear, or if it is, obviously, but
It's
also
pretty normal though.
I believe it's like, yeah, it was like I think like ethics in a way, conscience. Yeah. Like I just didn't feel good about it. It just felt really wrong somehow. And like these guys, I felt like they were on to me. But anyway, since then, 6 years, 7 years, even more later, I've made a point to always pay my dues, like not try to get things for free. But the cool thing about that experience, I have to say, was that we got to go in and connect with Dr. Jack Kruse, who I look up to very much as a genius in this space, who taught me so much of this information and directed me to many of the people who I even now work with and the information. So I'm really grateful for the work he contributed. And yeah, we got to have this amazing experience connecting with Jack, connecting with some of the community. I ended up meeting some people who would end up being like great friends or business contacts or both down the road, people I'd visit in Europe when traveling like a year or two later. So yeah, that was kind of how that happened, just through a little bit of luck, a little bit of my friend being super on top of things, and then a little bit of, us, having the right place at the right time sort of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that kind of started you down this whole pathway of looking at light differently, right?
Yeah, 100%. I would say it was the attempt to heal with diets that led to the light. What really interests me, or is interesting to me now, is this idea, as I mentioned earlier from the beginning, this idea of the energy body. Like, it's something that I know you're pretty familiar with, and people, I think, in this community are familiar with or getting more familiar with. But if you think about like the implications of what Becker really found, I mean, like,
right,
just to
regenerate like body parts, essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, to take it's almost like it's like I need to take a mental pause and basically go, like, there's this black hole in biology that he brought light to, which is that the cells everywhere in the body contain the same 23 chromosomes, the same genetic information. How do the cells in the brain know to become brain cells? How do the cells in the eye know to become eye cells? Those in the mouth, throat, the genitals, the guts, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, the feet, the toes, the legs, the limbs, the bones, the blood, the nerves, the blood cells, the blood vessels. Like, how do they all know the fat? Like, how do they know what to become? Like, how? They all have the same genetic information, like the same info. Like, what is the explanation for how those cells become what they become? It's like beyond miraculous, miraculous.
Absolutely.
And I think, I'm probably, after we get off the phone, I'm probably just going to sit and meditate on that one for a while. Like, it is astounding, that we even exist. It really is. And I love this kind of conversation, this kind of thinking, because it really gets me into the correct place where I could be thinking about all the things I have to do today or whatever else is like not done, or, that never goes away, at least in my experience. Like, that temptation, like, Satan's always there. If you want to play with Satan, he'll always be there to play with you, right?
Yeah.
But same with the light side. It's just that it's sometimes a little more like a quiet whisper compared to a loud roar. But I do think through our mental training, we can shift that. So anyway, regarding Becker, he pretty clearly discovered and outlined that this is the result of this energetic system in our body, which he called the body electric. Like there's an energy field, which is essentially who we are, communication between cells using like electricity. There's an actual field, and for thousands of years, they've talked and known about this in China and India, our aura, our energy field, the chi that flows through, or the prana that flows through our body, through everything within us. And I find that to be a fascinating concept worth diving into. In fact, I want to just, now that I'm speaking about it so much more, I'm going to go back and reread Becker's book again, because I'm sure it'll impact me very differently now than it did when I last read it when I was 16. I'm sure it'll be a different,
definitely.
It'll be a different kind of experience rereading it. But the fundamental idea stuck with me all this time, and even many of the experiments, we are organized electromagnetically. So we are electromagnetic beings, which is the same as saying we're beings of light. And so to me, it's just a fascinating idea to think, if we're truly these beings of light and energy, yes, we have matter in our body that maybe reacts not as quickly to, it's like the matter moves more slowly, but the greatest masters in history have gained the ability to do unbelievable things, like Yogananda writes about in the autobiography of a yogi, which I believe I had just finished a few months before we met or I should say spoke last. But in this book, the autobiography of a yogi, and to the profane, as Joe Dispenza would say, they will not believe any of this stuff. But to those who are open to this and are familiar with some of the science, if we are truly electromagnetic and you can master control of that energy with your mind, you could theoretically do anything, fly, bilocate, like these masters have been known to bilocate,
in the cities,
being in two places at once, walk through walls, drive through walls with cars. I've heard stories of a friend of mine's Qigong master, and his master who he learned from was there was a story where one time they were stuck or something happened, and he literally took him and the two guys in the car with him and drove them through a wall, no problem. Sounds nuts, but I'm inclined to believe that these kinds of things are possible, but only if we master our energy, which is hard, because I would have to master all of the more basic things, whatever challenges. And I do believe my business and my life are my initiation constantly. Challenges with food, with eating. I'm tempted constantly. Especially traveling and learning how to master that, which is something I'm still very much, I still feel very much like I'm in an early phase of, and I've spoken about this on another podcast recently, actually. I used to be super strict about my diet. I think some people could resonate from this, from a place of fear, fully terrified that if I eat the wrong things, I'm going to get sick.
Yeah.
And coming out of that more and more through my practice, my meditation practice, changing my perspective, questioning my beliefs, like we spoke about, I'm not living from fear as much anymore. I'm sure there's still areas to overcome, but it's different, right? Like you said, same but different, right? So that's a place where I've changed a lot in my life over the past several years. I don't have the same drive to be as perfect about my diet from a place of fear. So it's now, if I want to be perfect about my diet, I have to find let's say, a reason for that's not fear, a reason that's greater than fear. A reason, for example, I want to eat really well because I want to have the energy every day to do the best job that I can for the world, in my business, in my relationships. But that's a much different frequency than I'm not going to eat gluten because it's going to make my gut hurt and I'm going to have an immune reaction. I'm going to be sick and I'm going to have inflammation. I'm going to get really sick and die or something like that.
Right.
But it's easier in my experience. And my point is that I believe it's easier to be influenced and motivated by lower level vibrational emotions like fear. But part of the growth process is to overcome those as our motivational factors and elevate to greater, more, let's say, enlightened or higher frequency motivational vibrations. And this is what a friend of mine who is a yogi basically explained to me. When I say yogi, not just teaching yoga necessarily, but more like a monk, effectively. And his practice for many, many years. in living in India and also traveling and as an Indian medicine doctor. And he explained to me that basically our path is to lift our energy up from the lower survival centers. And Dispenza teaches something very similar, to lift our energy out of our lower survival centers and cultivate more energy in our human centers, those which make us different from animals. So like if we related each energy center according to the ancient yogic science of Kriya Yoga, the first center is related to money and material things. The second energy center is related to sexual production. The third is our digestive process. The fourth is our heart. The fifth is our throat and more philosophical. So I guess I skipped over a few layers, but sexual process is also related to safety. The third digestive center process, this is largely related to willpower and energy. And there's slight differences in this explanation from one of the more traditional explanations, but they're pretty parallel. But this is the one I'm more subscribed to, let's say. The fourth center, the heart, is like your passion for things, passion, desire, power, but from a higher level than like a sexual passion, like an inspired passion. The fourth center is like a philosophical level of thinking. The fifth center, the throat center. The sixth center is the pineal gland, the third eye, like sort of an enlightenment center. And the seventh center is like the direct connection to God. And so he was sharing with me what I found really interesting. I think it's really valuable to share with others, is the different types of people who would maybe are primarily operating from one specific center. Now, we all operate actually from, maybe not all from all of them, all of us. Some people maybe not from their third eye at all, from their intuition. But for the most part, most people are operating from a combination of their lower centers and hopefully some more of their higher centers, right? So, for example, the person operating from the lowest center would be like someone everyone could imagine someone who's obsessed with money, needs physical materials or tries to use physical materials to make them happy. I know this because that's what I did for 5-6 years, traveling around the world, trying to find that hit from something material, external, outside of me. The second, not necessarily like from physical things I would buy, but certain from experiences, right? Nothing against experiences, but I believed that I could use money to create happiness, basically. So that's that. The second center would be someone living from that center would be, for example, like someone who's pursuing like a sexual power. That's like their thing. And I can think of several people off the top of my head who that's their thing that they're seeking. They're trying to set their life up so that they can have more of that, more control, more women, more whatever, more men, more whatever, like, and have that as their thing that they get to, like metaphorically, but also literally like go to sleep with every night, something like that. Third center would be people operating more on a sport level. So like professional athletes, like people going out and charging, and nothing wrong about that. Or like endurance athletes, some motivational speakers that are out there today, and nothing wrong with any of these, but it's just a reference, a frame of reference. Right. The fourth center would be someone really inspired. This friend of mine happened to use the idea of like Steve Jobs. Like he really operated from his heart center. Like that was like a major guy. But this particular friend of mine, the doctor and yogi, explained that it could be potentially said that part of why Steve Jobs ended up getting sick. And I know someone who actually who knows Steve Jobs' wife pretty well, and he actually corroborated this independently. I hadn't asked him. It's just corroborated in my mind, because I've heard from both of these perspectives, one who knows the family, one who doesn't at all, but just knows the story, that Steve was really stressed and he didn't elevate out of, in some respects, those centers. Like maybe he was operating big time from his heart, maybe from his throat, but maybe he didn't go to the next level, right? For example, maybe that's not exactly correct, but people can get the idea of what's trying to be expressed. These are some theoretical ideas, and people can take from them what they like. But so then the fifth center is like the philosophical level, actually. So this would be related to people like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, philosophers, even the modern day, like Jordan Peterson, really intelligent people. And I really admire and look up to Jordan Peterson. But in his case, I'm not actually sure because I don't know him personally. But when it comes to intellectuals, usually there's a sort of lack of spirituality. Now, I don't mean to single anyone out, because I do believe Peterson, he was one of the people who got me interested in reading the Bible more. So I believe he's much more spiritually inclined than many. But so there's many intellectuals out there who are trying to rationalize everything, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to pin out names, but there are, people can think of these types of people. These are people operating on this center, and it is a much more human function. So the animal centers are the first three. The human centers start at number 4. Like basically animals don't have developed heart centers, maybe a little bit, but not nearly like humans. But then animals don't have developed throat centers. The only exceptions, maybe we could say like dolphins, because dolphins are, people say, oh, dolphins are very intelligent, loving. They communicate in a very complex way. Anyway, but according to the ancient yogic science, other animals don't have as developed heart centers, throat centers, pineal gland, third eye centers, and the crown. And this is what makes humans unique, is that we have this, like why we are something kind of different from animals. We consider ourselves different because we're sort of at a level more elevated to gods. And so all of the reason I'm saying all of this is because we can think of the human evolutionary process, like evolution within our own lifetimes, like evolving within a lifetime, within a day, within an hour, of bringing that energy out of those survival centers and bringing it up. And this has all too many similarities to the research of Becker and the electric body, or the body electric, and that research, for me to just disregard these ancient perspectives as irrelevant or inaccurate.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of info.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. It's fascinating though to kind of hear like the evolution of where you've come from, just even in the last like year and a half from our last conversation to just like this is kind of the next step for you. How do you integrate this stuff into like your company and products? Like, is there a way that you're trying to bring this into your business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I've actually personally, so even separate from my business, I've started to do is a training, let's say it should be a trainer. So Dr. Dispenza actually has trainers who train companies. And so I've actually done the training. It's something that interests me, potentially even to go out and spread some of his message, because the way I look at it, it's like, yeah, I know a good amount of information for my age, but to work with people who are wiser, older, have experience, to me, that's priceless. So more than likely, I'll be doing, let's say, corporate consulting, both in my own business and with other businesses that I work with, not only to get them products that can help their patients and their teams be healthier and better, but also the ways of thinking, and to be able to not just come up with my own method, which I could, but when there's already such great methods out there, like Dr. Dispenza and the formula he's put together specifically for bringing his work to companies, to me, it's priceless, and it's been valuable for me. So, and to give the really high level summary of what I'm, let's say, authorized to share of that, like here, and people can read this all in the books, by the way, like in the Breaking of the Habit of Being Yourself, but essentially, like, our personality creates our personal reality, right? And our personality is made up of how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And so many people are trying to change their personal reality or their life as the same personality, but it doesn't work. We actually have to change ourselves. And so that's like one of the basic ideas. And so how am I applying that? Well, sometimes I'll actually write this down, and I'd like to do it more where I'm actually writing this every day, but I haven't been as consistent in that way. But what I am doing every day pretty regularly is analyzing mentally on the fly. How am I thinking? How am I acting? How am I behaving, and how am I feeling? And this would be very similar to what you said about what are the patterns within me, or I'm willing to let go of these patterns. Like it almost, I would say, this way of looking at it, for some people, including myself, can give some more tangible, specific ways of looking at this and thinking about it to immediately identify and make changes. Because if we say patterns, it could be something like general, it might be hard to pinpoint, but if you say, what are the actual thoughts I'm having in this situation related to this circumstance?
And that's so funny you say that, because that's kind of what she says in a lot of her lectures too, is like, what's the feeling this is creating, or what's like, this thing that keeps coming up, what feeling am I having when it happens? Am I willing to let go of that feeling? Because whatever this is creating this feeling, and for some reason I want to keep having it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's no coincidence, as you said before, that these are there are parallels between all of these teachings. So like for
Right.
me, I would look at situations like worrying about anything,
Right.
whatever it might be, whether it's business or something about some travel, because sometimes I have so much going on. I'm like, how am I going to organize all this? Like these people and this thing. And they're like, how is this going to
Yeah.
work out? And it's like, just like, okay, well, what are the thoughts I'm having surrounding this issue? How am I behaving when it comes to this issue? And it doesn't have to be 100 things. It could be 2 or 3, just the things that come to the mind. Like, okay, I'm doing that. I'm doing that too. I'm thinking that. And then how am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling pretty disempowered, or I'm feeling pretty victimized about this or that circumstance. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
do I want to keep doing that, or do I want to shift it? So for example, Sarah, I've been like, I'll give people personal examples. So business, it's a great thing to speak from, I think, from personal experience. We are doing so much. It is unbelievable. Like, I can't believe sometimes how much we're doing. And it might not even appear on the outside because we haven't launched other products beyond our glasses, but there's a lot going on working with the expert. I was just visiting Dr. Wunsch in Germany for a week. Before that, I was traveling, meeting with other friends in Europe. Now I'm meeting with certain doctors and people here in Spain. And so there's so much going on. It's like, I need to take some time to integrate all of
Mm-hmm.
this information and use it. And that's actually what I'm getting to. But if I weren't using these practices, or using what I've learned, in the past, I've done this, I would continue to be in the cycle of stress and not identify that I was feeling stressed and that this isn't a pattern that I'd want to continue. So I might
Yes.
go out after this podcast and kind of, would be totally hypocritical, but to go out and choose to be disempowered and to choose to look at my life as like I'm somehow limited or victimized. And that might be something that I might have done as a previous version of myself. Now with these tools, like I can say, okay, well, all those thoughts that I can't this, or I can't that, or this is too hard, or this is too complicated, I'm going to shift that for I can. It's just going to take some effort, but I can. I absolutely can sit down and organize this on a piece of paper and then start taking the next actions. Like I don't have to, so that's thinking. Acting, I don't have to make decisions from a place of stress and fear where I might, for example, keep, let's say, or not even from stress and fear, but the way I used to. So for example, traveling, I might have said, oh, I'm just going to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, almost to distract myself, like a type of meta procrastination, a term
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Wunsch actually taught me the other day. Like, so not just procrastinating something, but doing something else in order to avoid even thinking you're procrastinating. So it's like meta procrastination. It's like a whole new level. And that's actually what I think most people do. It's like, we don't even realize we're procrastinating. We're doing something else to avoid the thing that we're avoiding. It's like, I love the idea of meta procrastination. It gives me so much more awareness about my own activities. But so instead of meta procrastinating this discomfort that I had, that I maybe have inside me or have had inside me by continuing to travel, go to the next opportunity, because they'll never end. There's always another opportunity or a shiny object, something. I'd say now, and I'm saying this and thinking more and more, you know what? I'm going to just change the pattern. I'm just going to decide to stay here, like stay, for example, where I am or somewhere close by, and stop making it like another excuse about where I'm supposed to be or this or that, blah, blah, blah. Like that would be a way to choose to act differently. And that's actually something I'm like doing. I've like recently been like, why am I going to keep moving when I could just at least stabilize myself here for a while? I'm in a great place. I'm in Barcelona. I mean, geez, I feel so lucky.
Yeah.
But anyway, for example, that'd be a different way of acting. And then a different way of feeling, before I move on, feeling even in my business, like instead of just, I've noticed it so many times because now I have a team and building a team and doing more and whatnot. It's like, I have certain people on my team who I could react to. Like I feel a tension in me that I could project out and react. But it's like, is that in the value of my company? Like these people, they want to help me. Like they want to help. They're actually here, I believe, because they want to help. And if something's telling me it's different, then most likely it's my mind, or I should really analyze the situation when I'm really feeling clear. But in general, from my experience lately, it's like I can see how when my mind is feeling disturbed or I'm feeling stressed, I want to react and project my own discomfort onto that person. But that's not the truth. And when I feel really clear and get to a state of clarity, I'm like, when you just have those moments where your heart opens and you're like, oh my gosh, like, why was I upset or why was I worried? Like, I'll have that and I'll be like, this person's just trying to help me. I'm going crazy telling myself that someone's my arch nemesis and they're just trying to help me, like literally something like that. So anyway, behavior, cutting that off and deciding to get over myself, basically, right? And move on and be productive. And feeling, am I going to go out, for example, after the podcast or whatever, when after somebody listens to the podcast or you get out of your car, whatever, like, am I going to choose to be disempowered, or am I going to choose to hold my head up and be empowered? Like, it is a choice. That's the amazing thing. Even though it's easier often to let Satan tempt us, like to let those lower emotions hold on. This is the work. I mean, this is the practice. And so as far as applying this into my business and life, that's what I'm doing, just trying to bring the higher frequency to everything I'm doing, to our products, to our product development. I mean, we're working on products that, as I mentioned earlier, can use light, different wavelengths and frequencies of light to change our physiology based on it, modern science and also older techniques, the experience of the scientists we work with. That's what we're doing. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting over the next couple of years. I'm like patiently, but also very excitedly awaiting what comes from what we're doing.
Yeah. And so much great stuff happening now just in your company. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you're working on? You mentioned maybe like lighting for houses, or is it like top secret stuff?
There's, yeah, it's pretty secret right now, I have to say, but color is the future, I believe. I'll just leave it at that. The power of color it's not just red light. There's way more than red light, basically. A lot more than red light. Blue light can be healthy, actually. I'll just say that. Blue light can be very good at the right time for the right case. So it's very interesting stuff there. Yeah. I'd say those are the main things. And then regarding the eyewear, blue light protection eyewear, we have some other products coming as well that are unique, different, and a little bit under protection, like a bit secret right now, but you'll see soon enough. But more than anything, as I mentioned earlier on, like, we're trying to spread the basics, right? Because like, it'll be really cool to get more advanced stuff together and have that for people. And I want to have it sooner than it's been going lately, but it's okay. Just going with the flow, trying to get things the way they need to be. But most of the world isn't even at blue light blocking glasses yet.
No, they're not there yet,
right?
At all.
So it's like, we have a lot of work to do, like we have a lot of work to do there. So it's like, I want to continue to serve the customers we have who want more. That to me is critical. But then what about the rest of the world who's like needs to just like basically learn how to walk? So it's like, we're juggling a lot. And I'm just, I don't know how to say it. Like, I'm just excited. I mean, to be honest, Sarah, like, yeah, on a personal level, I've traveled so long, and just coming to Barcelona, Catalonia. So it's like a region of Spain, but I think it should be its own country. But anyway, that's a different conversation. I like their energy. They're like a really independent minded people. The whole politics thing is outside of it's above my pay grade. I just love the Catalan thing. They have their beautiful language and everything. Anyway, Spain itself is a great country as well as a whole. But anyhow, so I'm hearing like the same yogi monk friend of mine, Balarama, who has taught me much about this principles of the chakras that some of which I've shared here, and actually was the first person who recommended me to Dispenza when I first met him. Is he's like, there's this Western guy you should really look into. And I didn't for years until I really was struggling and mentally was like, I need to look into this guy. I've heard about him now from 3 or 4 people. This is during the pandemic when everything kind of, had to go inward and face a lot of our stuff, let's say. Yeah. But so he had told me at one point years ago when I asked him, like, how do you decide where you're going to be and what kind of place would be the right place to live? And this night he's like, well, pretty easy. Like, you can actually just look at, like, when you go, like, do a lot of good things happen to you, or like maybe some bad things, or do you have a lot of like really great situations, or do you have a lot of challenges? It doesn't mean when you have challenges it's bad, but it kind of can help to inform like what the universe or God is telling us. Like, and whether that's, I mean, I can't say it's true or not because it's just a subjective perspective, but it's like, whether it's God or the universe or whatever people want to believe in, it's like, just makes sense. Like, to me, that's like a pleasurable way to think about life. Like, why? Because the question for me is, at the end of the day, do I want to do things the way that I've been doing them for the last few years? Like, which is stressing, forcing, pushing, etc. Or do I want to take this more relaxed, enjoyable approach? And I'm like, to me, that sounds like part of the relaxed, enjoyable approach. So my old self would actually have me reject that and say, no, I want it has to be difficult.
It
Because if I'm
has to
on
be
the frequency,
hard.
exactly, if I'm on the frequency of problem consciousness, easy doesn't work with my
Yeah.
frequency, right? But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyhow, so I got to Spain and I'm like, I've been wanting to live in Europe for years, like just, and I effectively have, but just on the move, not in
Right.
one with a
Like a
base in
nomad.
Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
nomad, but like the last 12 months I've been in the States for barely 2, and I've been everywhere else for the rest, like Indonesia, Europe, Australia, and that's basically it since this time last year. So um it's kind of interesting for me to say I've lived in Europe more than the US. It's just without a base. And so finally I'm here and I'm like, gosh, so many good things have been happening to me in this place. Like I got free tickets with my friend to the Barcelona game. We got to meet with the head doctor for this club, which is like one of the best clubs in the world. Lionel Messi played at Barcelona for many years. We're meeting with all these great people. There's all these connections. My best friend from high school lives 30 minutes away because his girlfriend's Catalan. So like that doesn't hurt. I have like a real good friend. Even my little brother happens to be studying abroad here. I'm like, there's all these signs from the universe. And I'm like, there's so much happening in my business right now that like, I'm not in a position to keep traveling at the rate I've been doing. I mean, I can sometimes, but it's like, I want to focus, not even need to. It's like, I want to focus on how much of the good we have going on. Right.
Yeah.
So all that's to say, I'm like, well, and one more sign, the Catalan language is so beautiful. I'm like, it's not useful outside of this relatively small region. It's not like French or something that you're going to get a lot more use from. But I'm like, I like cool projects. Like I want to learn Catalan just because it's cool. And it's pretty similar to Spanish, but not as similar as most people think. It really is its own language. It's not like a dialect of Spanish or something like that. And so I'm like, that's cool. So there's all these signs of like that. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
what if this were to just be my home? Like, what if because it's a total shift because the problem consciousness would reject that because that's a solution. That's like a decision. Problem consciousness wants to be in indecision, in no solution, in constant stress. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like that would be a solution consciousness. Like I'm going to rent a place in the freaking Costa Brava, north of Barcelona, and like have a base. And so anyway, just me to you, like that's something, I mean, obviously part of the podcast too, but it's like, that's something that I actually experienced mentally. And I'm like, wow, sounds like I've been making some progress. Like just if I listen to myself out loud, like,
Absolutely.
that's getting out of problem consciousness. Now it might look different for everyone. It might not be about where to have a base or where to be or whatever. It might be about something completely different. But I think the formula of analyzing because it was the thoughts of like, oh, I don't know where I should live, and the feeling or the actions of like keep moving, and the feeling of like feeling sort of lacking stability or whatever else. That's like, those are the thoughts, actions, and feelings. And so then of the old self and the new personality and therefore personal reality would be like thinking like, I'm abundant and I can have a base wherever I want and still travel all the time. The actions would be, I'm going to execute. I'm just going to do that and live my life and live my best life, empowered. And then the feelings would be, yeah, empowered, stoked, excited. So these are like real life situations where I'm learning to try to apply this stuff. And I find it to be super valuable. So that is, yeah, I'll keep you posted on the developments regarding the products and stuff. And it'll be really exciting because the world needs what we're offering. The world needs what we're offering. The world needs what this frequency is bringing out, I believe. And so let's just keep on bringing it out.
I love it. And I'll definitely bring you back on the podcast again when you've got everything out so we can talk about it. Cause I love this type of thing. And I feel like, just something as simple as blue light blocking glasses. I get messages from people, all the stuff you were talking about with Aura earlier, the Aura ring, I get messages from people constantly because I try to do a lot of free content also. And I talk about the importance of blue light blocking glasses. And I'll literally have people message me and they're like, okay, so I bought these glasses and all of a sudden my sleep is better. And now when I turn the lights on at home, at night, I don't feel good. Is that normal? They're just like having all these like huge changes. And so I think from where you and I sit, we've been doing the quantum health and circadian biology stuff for a while. We forget the impact of like blue light blocking glasses and just these like little small changes that we've been making for a while. But I think that, yeah, there's a frequency here for people who are just beginning. And then also people who've been on this journey for a little while that maybe they need the spiritual end of things. Maybe they just need to do something simple, like start wearing blue blocking glasses. I think there's something here for everyone.
I agree. I agree completely. I think it's really good stuff. Well, yeah, I think if I could put a closing message, it would be that I recommend people who are interested in getting onto the path of frequency. So assuming you have a new listener who maybe hasn't heard a lot of your stuff already, or even if they have, but especially for the new listener, like I couldn't recommend more strongly two things. One is using raw optics blue light blocking glasses. There's a reason I make them, and that I kind of committed my life to this project, at least the last 6 years, because they actually, from a vibrational frequency level, by changing and adjusting our chronobiology and our circadian rhythms, allow our body to come back into balance in such a profound way with like basically the most fundamental rhythm in our life, which is the day-night rhythm, our circadian rhythm that controls our activity and then our sleep and repair. So like the quality of our activity and our health during the day is largely dictated by the light we're exposed to, as you know. And then the quality of our sleep and repair and health at night is largely dictated by the absence of light, absence of artificial light, of disruption, and also the quality of our time with friends and family and relaxing and not eating too late and all the other pieces of, let's say, the light diet protocol that I think we probably got into more detail in the last podcast. And if not, people can find the Light Diet Protocol 101 on the Raw Optics website as a blog, Introduction to the Light Diet. And that would be one, is utilizing that. I would say that's it. And then people would ask, like, well, why Raw Optics? Like, of course, you're going to recommend your own company. Of course. Well, because I make them the highest quality, because that's the goal. And they look great. So we make them really stylish and to look amazing. And why am I not using them now? Because I have a big open window and a view of the Mediterranean Sea. So the near infrared light offsets the risk of the blue from the screen, which I'm blocking anyway with the filter. The only time I really use my daylight lenses, iris, exactly. The only time I really use my daylight lenses is when I'm in a place like my friend's clinic where I was earlier, where they have all these fluorescent lights that I can't control. Yeah. But or if I was inside and I couldn't open the windows, like if I was in this hotel right now, it was one of the annoying hotels where I can't open the window, I would have had these on after 20 or 30 minutes. Like I would have, usually I don't put them on right away, but 20 to 30 minutes is when I can start to feel the effects, and then I'll put them on. Because I like the natural full color without the yellow, to be honest. And so we're also always working on tweaks and improvements for our lenses, always, to make them better and better and better, and our frames as well. And so the sunset lenses, I use them every night, because literally I can't escape artificial light at night unless I literally just stay in my hotel room. And even then, if I'm going to do something like this, it's just hard to avoid. So there's that. But then the other thing I would recommend for anyone else who wants like to really get into this path, I would strongly recommend Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the reason is, as you mentioned, that you've read his books, and everyone has a different path, right? So he may not be the teacher for you, but then I would recommend finding someone who's truly operating from the spiritual center. If what you want is wholeness, if you just want to like charge and be stressed and push really hard, there are people out there who I can think of.
Tons of people.
But I want to tons of people who will kind of help you do that, like to get more stressed and work really hard and overwork and be in the grind and push yourself till you feel like crap and blah, blah, blah. But then if you're truly looking for wholeness, like spiritual elevation, it would be better to follow someone who's operating from a spiritual level. And it's not everyone's path at this time. Some people would rather be on the intellectual level. I've been there. I'm still there a lot of the time. I'm still in other levels as well, struggling with different challenges sometimes, but I'm trying to personally orient towards the spiritual level. The reason being that I believe, from all my experiences I've had, even at this, what others would consider relatively young age, that's the thing that brings the ultimate fulfillment. Like what the last thing I would end with here is that at the first time I went to a Joe Dispenza week long, and I took some time away from my life to focus on myself, take care of myself, look inward, meditate. It was difficult, many hours per day, and really evaluate myself. I remember one point when I just started to open my heart a little bit. And it's not like an easy thing. You just be like, oh, open heart. Like you have to kind of earn its trust and feel safe and let go of the things that are like we're using to keep our hearts closed, the hatred, because when we're in those emotions, our heart isn't going to be open. So having to let go of the judgment, the hatred, the fear, which is difficult if that's all we've ever known, which it for me largely was. And I just remember walking on the beach after this walking meditation, and I felt whole. Like I felt so much love. I felt so like this. And Joe says it's the most familiar or unfamiliar, familiar feeling you've ever felt in your life, or familiar, unfamiliar feeling you've ever felt in your life. And it is, he says, like who we truly are. Like that is our true nature when we're not in survival, to be in love, to be whole, to be in connection, to be in community. And I just thought, that is so awesome. Like, that is just, this is awesome. And so I realized, like, I think all I was looking for with all these diets and all this light and everything else was really just to feel whole. Doesn't mean that those things don't work and don't help,
Right.
but I think I
Right.
just wanted to feel whole. And that actually, and he says people heal because of their wholeness. So people who get into the work of Dr. Dispenza, a lot of people, they become rich because of their abundance. They become wealthy because they've brought themselves to feel abundant. They become healthy. They heal because they've cultivated wholeness in themselves. And I just thought that is so awesome. It's a completely different approach, but it made sense to me that if I was in chronic or constant stress and fear prior to starting to do more of that practice, for example, then no matter how good my food could be, in addition to the stuff I've talked about with mitochondria and how blue light affects our mitochondria and all this side of external light, if I were in chronic stress and fear, that's basically locking down my second energy center of safety,
Yes.
security, and stability. And that's where digestion functions. And so basically,
Mhm.
no wonder I would have had gut issues through my childhood and gas, and that leads to headaches and also chronic allergies because of the leaky gut. And probably I would think that no matter how much of the diets and all the other stuff I did, if I'm still locking that center down with stress and fear and putting, or over activating it, whatever the exact thing that goes wrong is, and someone else could probably explain it better than me, a yoga master, but the concepts are simple enough to understand. If you create lack of coherence is basically the idea. I mean, I can
Yes,
say
exactly.
you ruin the coherence in the center because of this information being in the chronic. So it's just like any organ or gland. Like, in fact, geez, it's funny. I said somebody else needs to explain it. I don't need anybody else to explain it. I got this. It's very simple. When we put too much energy into our stress center, like our third energy center, then our adrenal glands have to work really hard. So it's the
Mhm.
energy, the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions that affect the adrenals and put them in overdrive. So it's not like the chemicals secrete themselves. This is the beauty of the body electric, to tie this all together. What it means is that our thoughts directly affect our physiology. In fact, our thoughts are our physiology, and our physiology is our thoughts in some respect. Like, if I think stressful thoughts, I'm activating the stress energy center in my energy field. And you could measure that in the production of adrenaline from my adrenal glands. And you do that long enough, and you're going to have imbalance and adrenal fatigue, basically. And so here we got it. So if I was in constant stress and survival, I'm overactivating my third center, probably burning out my adrenals and
Mhm.
also ruining my digestion, because you can't digest when you're in stress. All your energy is going to your adrenaline production, to your limbs to produce, the blood's going out to the limbs, the extremities for survival, to make the brain more sharp, focusing. And so that's disbalance. So we have to learn through this process, meditation or whatever it is for someone. I believe meditation is one of the best to create that balance. So that's my takeaway for this: is everyone can change their state, whether it's with Joe Dispenza or Louise Hayes or anyone else. There is
Yeah.
a really different world that waits all of us. And as you said, I'm so glad you shared that Bible verse. Could you share it again?
Yeah, let's see. It's Matthew. I have it written Matthew 6. It says the power that created us has put everything here for us, but it's up for to us to deserve it and accept it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And
Really powerful.
just my thoughts closing out also, there's so many people that listen to this work and have the glasses and eat the diet and all that stuff, but just what you said, they have that survival stress. They have these patterns, they have these thoughts, and they're like, I'm not able to lose weight. I'm still struggling with autoimmune conditions. I'm still struggling. And I think this is, some people are going to hear this and be turned off and say it's too woo woo. But if you can open your heart to it, I think it could really change your life, honestly. And I think it's where a lot of us get to, hopefully, just like people who study water, like a lot of this is, we've got that 99% water molecule in the body, and thinking about how the water in our body gets structured kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with Veda Austin and her work.
Not super, actually.
Beautiful stuff.
Water and this type of thing.
It's beautiful. It's water and consciousness, essentially, and showing how we can imprint consciousness into water. And then we think about how we can, it's like taking Emoto's work, but taking it to the next level. And just it's wrapping your brain around that when it comes to our health. I think that's really the next level. A lot of people, they go to study water, for understanding structured water and looking at how it behaves. And then they end up looking at water and consciousness, which is like our internal network, and creating that coherence in the body. That's what Dr. Pollack is doing now. A lot of his work is going towards consciousness. And so I think it's that level that we have to get to if we really want this beautiful picture of health, and we really want the life that we deserve to have. We have to accept it. So yeah, as always, just such a wonderful, wonderful conversation, Matt. And I appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm inspired. For me, I know it's a good podcast whenever I leave extra inspired, even more than when I started. I'm really glad. I think we need to sit down when I'm in the States. I will figure out how we can connect and maybe get over to Georgia. Let's see.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. That would be amazing.
Yeah. So let's definitely keep in touch. And I'd love to see your newborn. Well, maybe won't be newborn by the time I get there.
Yeah,
but
he's already almost 7 months old.
Exactly. I don't know when that ends, but that's it's really cool. So I'm really glad we've had this conversation, and thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Matt.